Hello beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. This is Brownsugar Commentary and I'm your girl Kayla. If you are new here, make sure to subscribe for more videos. Okay, so today's topic, I want to extend the conversation that I had in my very first video, which was, if you haven't watched it, it is Where Are All the Black Girls Netflix, which is basically discussing the erasure of black women on the streaming platform Netflix. But I wanted to extend the conversation in terms of just talking about black stereotypes in general in television and film, discuss some of its origins, talk about some common stereotypes from past and present. So I'm going to break this up into two parts so that it's not super long, because if I don't, we're going to be here all day. Okay, so first things first, I want to talk about the differences between a black character and a character that just so happens to be black. So a black character is a character that you know that identifies as being a black person or African American. They subscribe to black culture. They live in a racial universe in which there are different races and cultures and things of that nature. A good example of this is literally all the black characters on the Proud Family. They are black. They subscribe to black culture. They use AAVE, African American Vernacular English. Yeah. Another example is like the Boondocks. Once again, all the black characters on there, they are black, they identify as black. The show critiques black culture as a whole, so, you know, yeah. And then a character that just so happens to be black is literally any show where there's black, that the character looks black, but the show necessarily does not dive into race. They don't live in a racial universe for all they know. There is no race. A good example of this is like, let's say, Very Odd Parents, right? And you have AJ. AJ is on the outside, he looks black. You would think he was black if he was a real person. However, in the Very Odd Parents, there is no race for all we know. And so he's just a character. And like, there's nothing tying AJ necessarily to blackness other than the way that he looks. So yeah, that's a character that just so happens to be black. AJ could literally be any race. Because like I said, the show does not exist in a racial universe. Race is never discussed. No one has a race necessarily. So any show where like that's the case, that's a character that just so happens to be black. There's also such a thing to be called black coding, where a character is perceived to be black, or people think that the character is black, but they're not necessarily black because the person who wrote the show or animated the person. This is usually in like animated shows, but like the character is not, there's nothing, once again, like there is no necessarily there's a race, but like I said, it's their blackness is almost understood, but they don't want to come out and say that they're black, or there's something else that is not making them black, like they're an animal or another color or something like that. For a good example of this is like Arthur. Like, we all know that Arthur and some of the characters on Arthur are black, but they're not really black because they're animals. But let's say Brain, for instance, he's a mouse, I believe, but he celebrates Kwanzaa. Kwanzaa is an African American holiday, so obviously if he were to be a real person, he'd be black. Black coding, that's a good example. Or like Garnet on Steven Universe, she has an afro, but she's an alien and she's like violet or like a ruby red type of deal. But once again, we know, or we believe, that she's black, but in the show, race is not necessarily a thing, but you get the gist that she might be a black character. Also, like Skeeter Valentine on Doug, I feel like Skeeter's a black person or a black child. However, once again, race doesn't exist. He's blue, so for all we know, he could be anything. But I feel like most animators who do this black coding thing, are just kind of doing it to shy away from race, or try to fit a diversity quota without actually like making a person or making a character outright black. But yeah, or because like I said, a lot of people like to shy away from race because for some reason people just get real funny when it comes to race. But yeah, so I just wanted to put those out, like get that out of the way, to for you to get a good idea of a black character and the difference between that and a character just happens to be black. But yeah, moving right along. So we're gonna start with talking about the OG black stereotypes with characters in TV and film. These stereotypes basically have existed since the beginning of time. Pretty much, they were created by white people to basically ridicule, make fun of, basically make black people feel horrible about themselves. There's no other way to put it, no other way to sugarcoat it. That's just what it is. It is from racism, and there's nothing else to justify that. Most of these stereotypes begin to show its head in these things that white people used to do back in the day called minstrel shows, where they would dress up in blackface and make fun of black people, and show them as in a negative light, basically showing us as lazy, ignorant, hypersexual, predatory, animalistic, all these horrible things that we all know that black people are not. But of course, at the time, during Jim Crow and even before that, slavery, honestly, were like, these people, that's what they would do. They would put on the minstrel shows, put on blackface, and this is why black people don't like blackface, because this is where it comes from. Okay, another example of these earlier stereotypes being shown is in the movie Birth of a Nation, which is one of like the first like major blockbuster films, which is like says a lot about America. It was also premiered in the White House, so they had a showing in the White House, which once again says a lot about America and its leadership. However, in this movie, blackface was done, and once again these harmful stereotypes persisted. I mean, so moving right along past the minstrel shows and all that, blackface, as time has gone on and time progressed, black people began to get more opportunities in Hollywood, and they started showing up in these TVs and films, but most of the time they're usually the only black person in the TV and film. But these stereotypes started showing up more. Obviously, as time gone on and black people started to get their own things, they started to try to dismantle these stereotypes. A good example of this is like Sidney Poitier, who was like a black guy or a black actor who was in a lot of films with a predominantly white cast, but he definitely did not do, most of his roles were not stereotypical, but this was not always the case. A lot of people did not have this freedom to do this, so they persisted, and it's like I said, some of them even persist in all black television shows, especially some of the newer stereotypes, which I will talk about in the second part of this video. But yeah, let's get right into it. The first stereotype I want to talk about is the Mammy stereotype. So the Mammy stereotype comes from a character named Mammy in the 1930s film Gone with the Wind, and basically this character is, their whole purpose is kind of just to serve as emotional labor for the white protagonist, if they are in a predominantly white film. They're usually a domestic worker of some kind, aka a nanny or some type of nanny or house worker, maid. If not, they're usually like a maternal figure of some kind, but they also persist in black movies too, but this is usually like the matriarch or the mother, grandmama, whoever. And like I said, once again, they just serve as emotional labor to whoever is the main character. They usually have nothing else going on other than they're serving their family. They are usually perceived to be asexual. They're not seen to be attractive. Sometimes they are overweight or plus size. Sometimes they don't have a husband. Not all the time, but most of the time they don't. And yeah, like I said, their sole existence is just to serve others. They don't have anything personal going on. They don't have any personal interests or hobbies outside of their family and serving their family. The oldest example of this is Mammy, and the person who played her, which was Hattie McDaniel, actually won an Academy Award. One of the first Academy Awards actually won by a black woman, which will only continue the trend of black people winning Academy Awards when they're playing stereotypical roles. So yeah, the next example, other examples of a Mammy stereotype would have to be Medea and Big Mama. While these are like more radicalized portrayals of these characters, they still fit the mold most of the time of a Mammy stereotype. Also, all the maids and the help, they are literally mammies. While I think a couple of black women won Academy Awards for this role. But when you watch the movie and you think about it, what did you learn about Viola Davis's character or Octavia Spencer's character? You learned absolutely nothing. While they did very well in their roles, however, you didn't learn much. You learned more. The story that you were really seeing was Emma Stone's character. But these characters, when you look at them, their whole purpose for living, their whole purpose for literally existing, the story that was being told is them being domestic workers. And even when you saw them at their homes, they were still just serving their family, serving their sons, serving their fathers, their husbands. But once again, it's another portrayal of a mammy stereotype. Okay, moving right along, we have the second most common OG stereotype, which is the magical Negro stereotype, and this is usually done by a male character. And this character, basically, their whole existence for living is to help the white protagonist accomplish some goal or accomplish some type of task. A good example of this, other characteristics of this character is that they're usually magical in the sense they have some type of power, aka they are like all-knowing, or they have a like unlimited amount of wisdom, like they can do anything, they may appear, disappear, stuff like that. A good example of this is Will Smith's character in the movie called Badger Vance with Matt Damon, and Will Smith's character's whole existence was just to help Matt Damon be better at golf. Like, that's pretty much it. Another example of this is literally like any Morgan Freeman role, to be honest. But like a good example was like Bruce Almighty. He's literally God in that film. That's pretty much his whole existence. Another example of this could even be another Will Smith movie. I don't know why I'm thinking about a bunch of Will Smith movies right now, but his role in Hitch can be also perceived as a magical Negro stereotype. This is probably like a better version of that. You can even maybe argue that it progresses into more of like a black best friend stereotype. However, in the beginning of the movie, he's literally just there to serve Kevin James's character and help him accomplish the goal of getting the attention of that one lady. I don't remember her name, but if you watch the movie, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, he doesn't have magical powers, but he has unlimited knowledge about women and dating, right? However, this is a little bit of a better portrayal because you learn more about his character. His character has much more to do other than to serve Kevin James's character. He has his own love interest. You learn about him and who he is and all that good stuff. But this can also be argued that it's a magical Negro stereotype. Alright, going into the next stereotype, we have the sapphire stereotype, which is known more commonly as the angry black woman stereotype, which is the one I hate the most. But basically a sapphire is basically, like I said, angry black woman. She is angry for no reason. She's just mad at the world. She's relentless. She's argumentative. No one usually wants to be around her. She usually cannot find a man or keep a man. That's pretty much it. A good example of this, if you watch the TV show from back in the day called Sanford and Son, Esther is a good example of this. She's usually just always going back and forth with Fred Sanford's character. Like, that's just pretty much her whole existence for living. You learn nothing more about her. She just always seems to be angry, and that's about it. Another example, or a more modern example of this, is Tasha Mack on The Game. As much as I love The Game and Tasha Mack, she is a very much a angry black woman / sapphire character. This angry black woman stereotype has also began to morph into what is known as the strong black woman stereotype, and while this can be empowering on the surface, if the writers of this show does not write this character well and thought out, this can easily just turn into just another sapphire angry black woman stereotype. And it also just kind of feeds into this idea that black women just ought to be strong all the time. Like, we can never be vulnerable, we can never show emotion, which is very disheartening, obviously, as a black woman, because, you know, that's not true. There's plenty of, black women should be able to be vulnerable and express different emotions or whatever. And sometimes we don't feel like we can do that because we feel like we have to be strong all the time because of this burden that's pretty much put on us. So yeah, a good example of the strong black woman trope done correctly is Olivia Pope in Scandal. While on the surface she is shown to be independent and, once again, unwavering, strong, all that good stuff. But she's layered. We've seen her be vulnerable. We've seen her express different emotions. We see her character develop from season 1 and onward. We see her, you know, her background and where she comes from and her family and how that molds her to become the woman that she is today. And so that's why that works. We can sympathize with her character and we can root for her character because we know more about her. She's layered, she's dimensioned, or she has dimensions to her. And that's why that can work when it's done right. But when it's not done right, it can easily just be interpreted as a satire and lazy writing. Okay, next we have the Jezebel stereotype. And the Jezebel stereotype is basically the seductress, the hypersexualized black woman. And a good example of these are basically any black woman in a black exploitation film, because usually their whole purpose for living is just to be cute and just move on. And this just kind of, and literally any Pam Grier films that she's ever been in the 70s, that is very much just a Jezebel character. But anytime you see a black woman and she's just kind of there to be cute or sell sex in some type of way, that is a Jezebel character. Moving right along, we have the last of the OG stereotypes, which is the Sambo character. And the Sambo character is like the happy-go-lucky black character who is just kind of, they're lazy, they are not usually smart, they can usually be overweight, not all the time, but sometimes they are, but they're just kind of just there to exist and serve as comedic relief. A radicalized idea of this character is like Joe in the Medea movies. Another example of this is Cleveland Brown in Family Guy. Because, like, let's be honest, what is Cleveland really there for but just to kind of just fill the diversity quota? But you can, if you really pay attention to his character, especially if you ever watch the Cleveland show, more and more you will see that he is very much like a Sambo-like character. Okay, so those are all of the OG characters or stereotypes of black characters in TV and film. And now we're going to get on to part 2 in the next video, where I go into more modern day portrayals of black stereotypes in TV and film. Peace out.